Okay, so this is the Conrail story. This is the most serious railroad history presentation you're going to see tonight. So who am I? I'm a very serious railroad historian, in case you hadn't noticed. I secretly run the Conrail Historical Society until Doug and Jen's kid knocks me off. Next slide. So we're going to talk about the history of Conrail and how it came to be. So in 1942, the bombing of Pearl Harbor started World War II. That's where the groundwork for all of this shit got laid, right? You can see the, look at the, oh, that's not the Japanese. Anyway, next slide. So U.S. railroads helped win the war, but they wore themselves out doing it, right? But because there were issues, there were savings realized in railroads through dieselization and modernization by scrapping shit like this. Look at that piece of garbage. But it wasn't enough to stem the tide. So what happened? Railroads tried merging, right? When you have one shitberg railroad and another shitberg railroad, what do you get? Shitberg Railroad! Okay, so anyway, the results were mixed. Next slide. Okay, so anyway, natural disasters, it wasn't just man-made. Natural disasters took a toll on the nation's railroad balance sheets. Man-made ones, like the Knox Mine disaster in the Wyoming Valley, did too, right? All the anthracite roads. No one needs anthracite anymore because they all heat their houses with, I don't know, something civilized.
Except us.
Except you, yeah, D-gens from up country. So even after shedding all the money-losing long-haul passenger and commuter passenger service, things were still dire for Northeast railroads. Look at this sexy beast over here.
With a cigarette hanging out his mouth.
You know what? You know what? That E7, I could get it. That's hotter than Tanis right there. Okay, next. So they tried modernizing their operations, right? Look at fucking Perlman. He just fixed everything, right? He was like, no track, get rid of that, make a new yard. Yeah, kind of.
Is that what that is?
That's exactly what that is. Look, oh no, that's Stuart Saunders. He just liked to bang horse. Anyway, next slide. But eventually, reality caught up with all of them, and everyone went bankrupt. All the railroads in the Northeast lost it one after another after another. If you are not familiar with the causes of it, seriously read Rudy's book. It was his reason he got to graduate college, and it's one of the best railroad books I've ever read. Shut up, no homo. Next. So Conrail came along. They needed to do something, right? And they were like, well, what are we going to do? And everyone was like, I don't know, what are we going to do? So they decided to make Conrail, right? And Conrail came about because you couldn't just not have railroads in the Northeast. I mean, who's going to ship all the wooden dildos, right? So, so they had to do something. Norfolk and Western. No. That would have been coal. Coal dildos. Well. That's much earlier. That's a different subject. Okay. All right. Anyway, so anyway, Tricky Dick, who was decidedly not a crook, stepped up and bailed everyone out. Actually, it was Congress, but he didn't ruin it, which is one of the few things.
He looks like he has to take it.
And the bankrupt railroads were going to be combined to become one government-owned entity, Conrail, which we all know was the best railroad in the world and continues to be.
Can we get this made on shirts? Like,
Yes, they're on Teespring. They're $350 a piece.
Whoa!
Hey, you know what? Quality costs money.
I don't know that.
So anyway, in order to prevent a monopoly in the region, the struggling D&H, who never made money doing anything since 1832, were given a whole bunch of railroad, and they were like, here you go. And they were like, what? And then they were given some locomotives, and they were like, wait, what? So they renumbered them with masking tape, and then they ran them down the Northeast Corridor, and everything was fine, right, for a couple of years until Guilford took over and realized that you couldn't just run an entire railroad with scabs. Anyway, so Guilford got a whole bunch of trackage rights. I mean, D&H, Guilford, whatever, it's all the same thing. But you got to see GP39-2s and Boston and Maine locomotives on the Northeast Corridor. That's in Baltimore, by the way. You can tell because of the needles over here. That's what that is. What? No, that's Bayview. That's Actually, it's Orangeville. That's CSX running across the top of it. Yep. So, on April Fool's Day, 1976, Conrail started up and immediately started kicking ass. I mean, look at this, right? Unlike the Penn Central merger, everything went perfectly. Employees of the bankrupt railroads were all extremely happy to have a new stable job and worked hard to make it a success, especially the EL guys. And everyone got along on the first day, especially, except for that Penn Central dick that yelled at Big Mike, what an asshole, right? Fuck that guy. But everyone else was great, because everyone on Conrail was great, because Conrail was the best. Next. Conrail immediately started turning things around. They purchased new power. I mean, look at this. Look at this. That's like a...
Supplemental venting.
Yeah, never mind. Anyway, next slide. Let's ignore that. Operations flowed perfectly. And look at this. Look at this. They're moving straight. Like, look at that.
Holy shit! Holy shit!
Look at that. Anyway,
Holy shit!
And thanks to the relief provided in the Staggers Act, customers returned in droves, or if they didn't, the lines they were on were just abandoned. Fuck those guys. But then, the Reagan recession happened, right? In the 1980s, everyone was too busy doing cocaine. Everyone invested in blow, and they forgot to invest in actual things. So you got this giant mountain of white powder and a bunch of stored locomotives. But it was okay, because the recession in the early 80s gave Conrail a chance to catch its breath. It was too busy, it was too tired of kicking ass, and it needed a breather. And it shed itself of a lot of inherited baggage, like useless people who it didn't need. They're out of there. By the way, look at this photo. That's the, I think, yeah, it's in Hollidaysburg on the back side. Look at Hollidaysburg back in the day. Oh, wheel snipe Sally. Anyway, next photo, or next slide. So the recession just ended up making Conrail even better, right? Look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. B-36s, pigs, past that, like, crack den, no one cares. And so the problem now was that Conrail was too successful, despite its lack of cabooses. You, Rudy. For the record, my old layout that I tore down a year ago was set in 1985. I ran cabooses on it. Rudy one day just showed up and was like, nice layout, let me shit all over it. And so after he was done leaving a big yard loaf in the middle of the fucking classification bowl, he was like, by the way, they retired all the cabooses in 1984. Great. Okay, so that caboose track that I had wasn't necessary. Anyway, next slide. That's... God damn it, you son of a bitch. This is what happens when I let him download the presentation. Fuck you. All right, next slide, next slide, next slide, next. Son of a bitch. Go, there we go. Anyway, so in the 80s, the government could not handle doing something well because they were convinced that the government could do nothing wrong or do nothing right. So they had to do something about it. Oh, but the other thing they did do was run the Soviet economy into the ground, but that was really just oil prices. Anyway, next slide, that doesn't matter. So what they were going to do was sell off Conrail, but everyone who worked for Conrail was like, no, we don't want Norfolk Southern taking over our railroad. They make them shit in plastic bags. So NS wanted to take over Conrail, but Conrail was like, no, fuck off. Look at our big... Anyway, they just whipped it out, and they were like, no, get out of here. So instead of being bought by NS, Conrail whipped its dick out, and it turns out it was a shower and a grower. So in 1987, what?
When did Rick Ross own Conrail?
Oh, the entire time. He's a boss. No, Fitty worked for the Reading. So in 1987, Conrail had the world's biggest IPO at the time, raising nearly $2 billion. That is massive. That's $4.5 billion in last year dollars, which probably means $4 billion in today's dollars. Anyway, next slide. So being the best railroad in the world was no accident. In the late 80s and early 90s, Conrail initiated a continuous quality improvement program, as you can see by their paint scheme applied to that beautiful piece of appliance. And as a result of the Conrail quality program, Conrail continually found new ways to kick ass. The world decided that it simply wasn't fair to the other railroads out there to let Conrail continue to do this at such a rate. So, what are they going to do? Well, Conrail decided it was going to focus on being a trunk line, serving the X, and it was going to shed its non-core lines. So it sent a bunch of shit down to like the Eastern Shore. Seriously, you ever been down there? It's a bunch of chicken fuckers, and like there's like I want to say that there's a Stuckey's down there. That's what you're dealing with on the Eastern Shore. So anyway, they were like, here you go, have an SW8 and shut the fuck up. So they gave them an SW8 and they shut the fuck up. It actually worked out real well. Oh yeah, and there's a whole article all about that in the latest Conrail Quarterly. If you're not a CRHS, or if you're a CRHS member, it should be either in your inbox or in your mailbox. And if you are not a CRHS member, get the fuck out of here because I don't have any time for you. Next slide. So anyway, as part of that X plan, the Conrail spun off a bunch of its less profitable areas, like the whole Reading and Northern thing. Like, no one cared about that. But it was a bit more of a dream than a reality. And so, as they moved on, they held on to a bunch of these other bullshit lines. But yet the madmen and lunatics of Port Clinton got a hold of a bunch of shit. But there was a problem. So Conrail did this IPO, and despite its own efforts to let other railroads occasionally win, Conrail was still doing too well. And so what happens as a public company? Well, they had to do what was best for their shareholders. And we all know what it means, what shareholder value means, which is hold on to your ankles pretty hard. So what they ended up doing was that they ended up looking for new suitors, and that was decidedly not influenced by the decision to start Battlefield Harley-Davidson. Anyway, so they had to do what was best for them, even if it meant selling itself. Next. So everyone knows that CSX every morning wakes up and goes, oh shit, we got to run a railroad this morning. So they wanted some way to cover that up and be like, oh yeah, no, we know what we're doing. So they were going to buy Conrail, right? But NS was like, I don't think so, motherfucker. So they fought it out, right? And what ended up happening was they both won and everyone else lost. NS and CSX agreed to split up Conrail about, well, roughly in the middle. Conrail lost, its shareholders came out okay. NS and CSX agreed to split Conrail up roughly in half, except for various sections of the railroad that couldn't be clearly cleaved in twain, like Detroit, Philadelphia, and North Jersey.
And that is an accurate representation of North Jersey.
Yes, it is.
Right?
There's just not enough bridges in the photo.
No. That's Detroit, and then this is
Patty's Bar.
that's yeah. You see, like
Top is Detroit. I really thought that was Newark.
well,
Newark too.
anyway, next slide. Let's get out of here. So the fix was in. Conrail Shared Assets was created, and it was a shared subsidiary between the two conquerors. And it was an end of an era. Conrail was officially cut apart on June 1st, 1999. 50% went to Norfolk Southern, 42% went to CSX. Also, Rudy, do you see that? You know what that is? That's a, what?
That's a shoving platform, Ed.
No, Rudy, that's a caboose.
That's the 137. That's the wrong one.
No, that's a caboose, and that's in 1999. So, Rudy, do you know what that means? That means that there are still Conrail cabooses in 1999, so shut your whore mouth. Next slide. Anyway, but Conrail's memory lives on. Luckily, Conrail has the world's best historical society to keep its memory alive. The CRHS, we're the best. I mean, you're the best. I don't actually have any fiduciary duty, which is the sweet spot. CRHS does the hard work of preserving Conrail's history and telling the Conrail story every goddamn day. Because I remind them on Facebook that you better, or else I will start posting pictures of Goatsy. And here are a few of our activities. One, that's our archives. Two, Doug grabbing, playing grab ass. Three, we got the Conrail cart here. It's like the danger cart from Aqua Teen. And then over on the right, the shirt that for some reason all of these stick up their ass motherfuckers will not let me make because they're like, oh, it looks inappropriate. All right, raise your hands if you would buy that shirt.
I'd buy the shit out of it.
Yeah, right. Okay.
I already have boots, so it'd be perfect.
All right, good. We're getting Dal to do that on Tuesday. Next slide. So that's the Conrail story. I'm sorry it's not as exciting as the first time you've seen it because, well, the first time you probably weren't used to that level of profanity, but it's entertainment. And you know what? I like to think that it was worth the price of admission.